Welcome all of you to the Business Plan Competition Workshop on Sustainable Technology. The reason we're having this workshop is that we're offering a new prize in this year's Business Plan Competition for the best business plan in sustainable technology. If you don't know much about the Business Plan Competition, it's very easy to enter. You just need a two-page executive summary of your idea to enter in round one. That's deadline January 28th. Coming up. In fact, you may find these little palm cards around on your desk, and they've got some of the critical information about the website and stuff like that where you can get all the answers to your questions. But we encourage you to form teams. You're allowed to have up to 4 people on a team entering the contest. You could enter by yourself, but frankly the odds are better if you've got at least one partner. So that's why we encourage networking and why Marty was talking to you about meeting each other tonight. You can have as many as 4. One of the members of the team has to be a full-time GW student, and 50% or more of the team have to be GW affiliated. And by that we mean student, faculty, or alum. 50% or more. But all these rules are on the website. You can read about it. But I'm pleased that our leader tonight is Marty Silber. Marty is a MBA from GW. He also has a master's in accounting from some other school. He's a CPA. But around campus here, Marty's known as the MBA Clean Tech Professor, because that's the course he's been teaching here in the School of Business. In fact, he was telling me that next year he's going to be teaching an international version of that, dealing with clean tech startups both in the United States and in China, and contrasting those two. But I hope you get a lot out of this, and I suppose that the things I'm listening for that I know you'll be able to walk out of here with, number one is understanding the definition of a clean tech business plan, so that when you enter, you qualify for this extra prize we have. And number two, Marty and his guest speaker are going to be talking a lot about sort of the key trends and drivers in the sustainable technology space. And if you understand those, I think you'll write a better business plan and do better in the competition. And by the way, the prize for sustainable technology is not the only thing you could win. You could also win a prize for being first place, which is another $25,000. Second place, an extra $10,000. Or if you have an undergrad team, that's another separate $10,000 prize. So you can pile these up. We had one team last year that won 3 of the prizes and walked out with quite a lot of money. So, and we've raised the ante. We have, instead of $50,000 total cash last year, we have over $60,000 in cash this year, plus a lot of other prizes that are not cash. So I encourage you to enter. And without further ado, Marty Silver.
Before I start, I want to sort of go around, maybe get a couple people to talk about what they actually why they're here tonight. So does anybody want to raise their hand and kind of talk, sort of what's your objective here, what you want to learn tonight? Anybody? I could call on somebody. Go ahead.
I'm an alumnus. An alum. Anyway, I'm here looking for a student that might want to be on a business plan competition. Excellent. I was in the business plan a couple of years ago, and I got into the semifinals.
Right.
And so I got a new idea, but I'd also entertain other ideas. So just looking to participate in another team.
Absolutely, and that's actually one of the things that John and I are both encouraging this year, especially for the sustainable prize, is that we're encouraging businesses, in the DC area to partner with students here. There's many businesses in the DC area that I talk to. I work with a lot of startup companies, and a lot of startup companies, they don't have the time or frankly the money to hire somebody to write a business plan for them, but they have all these new ideas. And I thought, well, isn't it great to partner with a student at GW who has this opportunity? So we're really reaching out to startup companies in the DC area and encouraging them to reach out to us who be in touch with our students. So that's another avenue that we're taking this year. Also, if you're interested in taking that path, I'm in touch with a lot of graduate students that have recently graduated GW, and I'm sure I can encourage them to share their ideas with you.
Marty, if I could just make one note since it's relevant to this topic. On the GWBizPlan website, if you go to Resources Network, we just recently partnered with Co-Founders Lab, so we're listed under their business plan competition events, so that's another tool that we're starting to market for online networking as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to share their objective, what they want to get out tonight? Anybody? All right, great. Well, we have great pizza here, we have great drinks, and it's much better than my home cooking, so I'm certainly going to enjoy the pizza. Yeah, thanks. Before I go on, I really want to thank John Rollins for his great, actually mentorship to me, being a friend, and also just working with me the last 2 years. John has also been a guest speaker for my class that I taught last year. I was a professor here, as you know, actually in this classroom, teaching clean tech. And John and I have actually met many times at the Politics and Prose, working with each other, put together this sustainable cash prize. So thank you, John. And so then I'm going to go on to our next slide here. Now, we're gonna kind of wing the agenda here, which is what I usually do, and I usually end up at the blackboard, but I'll probably stay away from that tonight. We did our networking, and hopefully all of you got a chance to meet with each other. And also, Denisa has a list of all the people that came tonight, so she'll be able to help put you in touch with somebody if you haven't met them so far. We're going to have our keynote speaker. We're going to talk about trends in the sustainable technology arena. And then we're going to talk about the Sustainable Technology Prize, and then any Q&A. And we'll probably get out around here about 6:15, 6:30. So what I'd like to do is, let's see. We're not going to really talk about the trends yet. What I'd like to do is just reiterate what John said about welcoming everybody here, and thank you for your interest in the Sustainable Technology Cash Prize, which is $4,000. Isn't that correct?
It may go higher.
It may go higher. We're looking to take it higher, and we'll keep you posted on that. This is the first year that we're having this prize, and we're very excited about this new prize. We're actually on a daily basis reaching out to different companies and looking for them to make pledges to increase the cash prize. So that being said, I want to introduce our keynote speaker, George Ashton. He is the CFO and founder of Soul Systems. And a little story about George. George and I have known each other for about 5 years. He actually approached me when I was at a conference about 5 years ago. And many people approach me about with different ideas and concepts and see what I think about them. Because I've been involved in DC renewable energy movement for about 10 years now. And a lot of people have great ideas. But very few of them actually get implemented and are successful at doing it. And for the last 10 years, one of the biggest pieces that have been missing from the puzzle is financing projects, financing renewable energy projects. And George approached me with his idea, and he'll talk about it, his company in a second. And him and his company and his partners, his team, have been so successful. One of the most successful businesses in DC and in the country and what they do. And it's just a privilege having George here, and I very much look forward to him talking with you and sharing his entrepreneurial experience, because he's done such an amazing job building his company, and he's one of the few people that took his idea, ran with it, and his company is doing fantastic. He took a bottleneck in the industry, a challenge, and turned it into a solution. So with that being said, I want to introduce George Ashton.
Quite an introduction. Let me get my presentation up, guys. Hold on a second. That's okay. Enough of these now that I should be able to figure out how to work PowerPoint. So, thank you, Marty, for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm excited to see so many folks in the room interested in a sustainable energy business plan competition. I think years ago, people would have scratched their head and asked, what is that? And I think it's great that it's come into the forefront of the political and business arena. And so we're all sort of interested in it. I thought what I'd do today is share with you a bit about my story, my entrepreneurial experience in starting Soul Systems with a partner of mine, Yuri Horowitz, and also relate that story to some of the principles I think that are important in thinking about a sustainable business, right? And how you can make a spot for yourself and for your company that will hopefully produce profits and save the world at the same time, and create a niche for yourself in the sustainable energy field, a field that's growing and changing so fast that you have to be sort of agile and flexible with your approach, and really acutely aware of what's going on around you. So as I go through the slides, you'll see that I have lessons at the bottom of each slide that sort of relate to that. Feel free to stop me at any time. I don't have an hour and a half to go through all the intricacies of what our business does, and it's sort of complicated, so I've simplified it. But feel free to stop me and ask me if you have a question about the way this develops. One of the things that's nice about sort of hearing someone else's story is I think entrepreneurial stories really relate well to each other, because there's a certain process that we all go through in turning an idea into a reality. And still today, when I look at the company and the people that work for us, I'm still thinking that this is sort of crazy the way that happened, and exciting at the same time. So you'll see here that there are a bunch of facts and figures about the company and how much we're doing and how big we are. 3,300 customers. We had 30 in 2008. And then a bunch of installer and developer partners. There's solar installers and developers. And then a lot of money that we've helped usher into solar project finance. And then really this is, you guys don't know what an SREC is, but it's like a carbon credit for solar. So that's the commodities trading SREC business. And then down here we have what's more the investment banking arm of the business that we launched late last year. And it has also been successful. We've done a lot of cool things in that business as well. And I think one of the things you'll see as I talk to you about the two different business plans or different business models is how they both follow the same track of identifying a problem and figuring out how to solve it. So let me go right on into it, and I'll try to keep it fairly short. So solar credits, these things here, are like carbon credits for solar. And really states enact legislation to help subsidize solar, because it's kind of expensive, by allowing them to sell solar credits to big, ugly power producers who aren't very green. These guys very green, these guys not so green, right? And so this legislation went in place in 2007, 2008. My partner, Yuri Horowitz, was an attorney at Alston & Bird. I was in the capital market space at Fannie Mae. Legislation goes into place that sets up this market, but no one really knows what's going on, surprisingly. You think if markets are efficient, they aren't nearly as efficient as you think, right? So this is not happening for a year or two, even though it's set up to sort of occur, where these solar credits are being sold from people who have solar to these big bad guys over here. So what these guys do when they don't have the credit, they just pay a fine, right? And this market is legislated, so it starts off small in 2008, and it grows, almost doubles every year, the requirements for solar in the District of Columbia. Let's use that as an example. So 2008, we see this market. We see that no one really knows what's going on. He's an attorney. He understands the legislation. I'm a capital markets guy. I understand how trading works. The market's still too small for us to really make a ton of money, right? I mean, or even to sustain ourselves, right? But we see that the market is legislated to grow in 2009, 10, and 11 into an incredibly sized market. So we're like, well, we'll work at night, we'll work weekends, we'll set ourselves up, we'll make this happen. We won't quit our jobs right away. And then once this market picks up, we'll be in a great place to sort of take advantage of our first mover advantage. So rule number one, find a problem and try to solve it. I will say that there are people, and successful ones like Apple, who don't necessarily find a problem per se, but just create something really cool. That's another way to go about creating a business. I would gather to say that more businesses are successful when they are solving a problem that already exists for someone. Oh, down. Rule number two, be sure your problem is a big one. Nothing like solving a problem that 3 people have, right? So when we started out, the SREC markets were really just a few states over here, but we knew there was pending legislation to create similar markets in states all across the country. Pending, not there yet. So when you're trying to solve a problem, make sure you pick one that's big enough that's going to make a difference, or make the difference that you want. Find your passion, rule number 3. So if you look at the cost of a solar credit system, a solar system, you'll see solar credits down here make up a good portion of that cost. Our passion wasn't to be commodities brokers. We didn't want to be hair slick back New York Wall Street guys shifting and throwing these things around making money. Our passion was solar and getting solar installed, right? And so knowing your passion and identifying your passion will help drive the direction of your business model. And so we didn't head in the direction of becoming an exchange. And we actually had competition that did that. They became an exchange, and they sort of, just were interested in watching SREC sort of fly through, and they took a little commission off the top. We actually became more entrenched into the industry, working with developers and creating a more sort of stable ground for this financing of solar systems. So find your passion and enjoy it, because one of the lessons I didn't put up here is hard work. There's a lot of hard work, but it doesn't feel like work if you found your passion and you're enjoying it, right? Or still sometimes it does, but not as much. That's number 4, create value and then protect it, right? So in this situation, those households only create 2 or 3 SRECs a year, right? Solar credits a year. And the energy suppliers that are buying them, they want 1,000, right? So the value that we create being between these homeowners and energy suppliers who have to buy these credits is that we can amass a bunch of credits and sell them on behalf of those homeowners to the energy suppliers, right? The other value we create is because we're a reputable counterparty, we can actually enter into long-term contracts at a fixed price to sell SRECs to these guys. A household can't do that. Pepco's not gonna contract with your cousin who has like 3 SRECs to sell a year, right? But they will contract with us who has 1,000 to sell a year. More value. And geographic diversification. So we took on some risk in sort of starting these markets by guaranteeing prices for solar credits, but we could diversify that risk across multiple states and across multiple markets, something that individual homeowners or businesses who had solar couldn't do. So creating value and then protecting that value. So first mover advantage, right? No one else is in the marketplace. We get in and we try to spread our wings wide. I'll tell you how we did that. We started out by actually talking individually to every homeowner that wanted to sell their credits. And that would be like 3 days worth of work and $30 a year worth of revenue, right? We said this is not going to work in the long run. So instead, we decided to partner more closely with installers and developers and become part of their sales package to customers. They were already in the houses selling their projects. They could just sell our services as part of the overall economic package for the system, and that was great. So we would educate the installer, they would educate the customer, and every time we got a new installer partner, it'd be like planting a seed. And then, of course, all that we would harvest it over the years. Legal capabilities, understanding legislation and geographical location. We were on the East Coast in these markets, and that was helpful as well. So creating value And then after you find a way to create value so that you can sustain your business, finding a way to protect yourself. And in cases of technology, that's IP, right? In cases of a limited market of buyers or sellers, that's locking people into long-term contracts. All that is sort of good business practice. And I'll say that these are all good rules and good principles for creating a sustainable business model. Winning the business plan competition, I would refer to the grading scale that they're talking to you about. But this is good for establishing your business after you've won. Rule number 5, expand, expand, expand. Word of that stands still, it's back, right? So continue to move through your model into other models that make sense as well. Don't be content with staying where you are. So if you look at the solar project investment stack, a lot of things that takes a solar project off the ground, this is the project finance stuff that Marty was talking about. Tax equity, debt, sponsor equity, and SREC monetization are all economic inputs to getting a project off the ground. And this is not just for solar, this is for wind, this is for biomass, any number of renewable energy projects take these things to get a project off the ground. We started out with SREC monetization, well, that's the SREC market, the solar credit market stuff I was talking to you about. And then we expanded now in late 2011 into actually also providing sponsor equity, debt, and tax equity by becoming an investment bank almost for projects. So we find an investor and then tell that investor, okay, we know what you want, now we're going to go find a bunch of projects. We do a bunch of due diligence on the projects and bring those projects to the investor and they would invest. Right? That's what investment banking is to some degree, finding deals for investors. So that's how we expanded. And lo and behold, when we expanded, we went back to rule number 1. Find a problem and solve it, right? So it's nice to say, yeah, I'd love to go into doing this, but there are people already doing it. What are you going to bring that's special, right? And so we saw that in a particular segment of the market, there were all these problems. Incentive structures were regionalized, so there's not like one grand subsidy across the whole country. They're very localized subsidies for solar. It makes it hard for a national player to know what's going on in all the marketplaces. Limited capital sources, high relative transaction costs. So a lot of people that said they had a project or said they had money and didn't have a project or didn't really have money to invest. So we created a vetted community of investors and a vetted community of developers to interact in a more efficient manner. And then credit concerns, sort of along the same line. And lo and behold, number 2, be sure your problem is a big one. So here's where we were when we started in terms of the solar industry, right, and how big it was. And here's where it's expected to grow to, right? Tremendous growth. And it's hard to find that in many industries in this economy, but making sure that whatever we're doing has a lot of runway. Find your passion and enjoy it. So our passion was still solar, right? But in this case, particularly my passion was actually making the market more efficient. And we utilized technology to do that. So we created a standardized platform for taking an inventory of the information on a project. So much time was being lost between a developer and an investor trying to translate the information about the project to the investor who was interested in investing. Days, weeks, in fact. So we said, okay, we're going to make this more like a mortgage-backed security or any other sort of standardized asset class, and we're going to actually take all the information, a ton of it, and then we're going to show it in a uniform fashion to the investors so they can look at multiple projects and find the one that's best for them. And we did that utilizing technology. And then, 4, create value and protect it. So traditionally, what was happening in the industry is a developer would know one investor and go out and look for projects that fit that investor's needs, right? And they would find a number of projects that penciled but wouldn't be good for that investor. And we said to these developers, listen, we know 25 investors with different boxes, they call them, different preferences for projects. Instead of going to one, why don't you come to us? We have all these options in one place, all this financing, and we'll take it to all of our investors or the investors that it works for and get you sort of the best price or best execution model for pricing out solar projects. And that's what has attracted them to us. And then again, expand, 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 right? So we've had that model, it's working, we want it to work more. And now think about, okay, should we try it, we did it for solar, should we try it for biomass or wind or geothermal, or should we go other places? And I think we're thinking about solar, but going other places like Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, India, places like that. and just in finishing, if you're looking for a summer internship, my HR department made me do this, so I apologize. We have them available, and I can give you this information another time. So that's our story. As I was putting this together, I never really thought about the way the business is developed this way, and it's according to these same rules, but as I put it together, it sort of made sense, and it struck me as important stuff to share with you guys as you develop your own business plans and think about what makes a good business plan or a good business, anyway. Any questions?
So you said you had first mover advantage because you jumped on the SRX market, basically when it opened up, but what do you do if you are someone who has an idea, you do the research, you find out someone else has already started that?
Mm-hmm.
I guess what are your recommendations?
Yeah, so it's funny. There are two schools of thought. One school of thought is always find a competitive advantage, right? Somewhere, somehow, there's a competitive advantage. And so look for that, figure out what the other person's doing, and try to find a way that you can do it better or in a different place, or with different people, or take a different approach. The other school of thought is there are 13 or 14 different kinds of toothpaste in the toothpaste aisle, and they all do pretty well. So it doesn't mean just because someone else is doing it that you can't also do it and also make a living doing it. But you do have to assess market size and make sure there's room for both of you. And you could better believe that your competition will try to find a way to block you out, and you should be doing the same thing to them. That's just sort of my MBA brain coming out, not really sustainable stuff. But yeah, those are my suggestions. But the advantage of first mover is so great if you can really do a good job of marketing yourself that this goes back to a thought I had earlier, talking about how to get started on your business plan. Do something. Get started. Get out there. Talk to someone about it. Talk to lots of people about it. Try to get transaction done. You can learn a lot from just sort of getting out there and doing something that you can't learn from sitting in a room and trying to create a business plan.
Good advice.
I have two questions, one personal and the other general. The general question is that for your company or for the industry, what do you see as the biggest roadblock right now?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is the personal one is, in general, do you think, if you know you have an entrepreneurial mindset when you just know about yourself, but is it better to kind of get experience and then get out there with a plan, or do you think, as a recommendation, would you say that you're confident enough, you have a good idea, just go for it?
Okay, so the first question, the biggest challenges, and I'll speak to solar, but they're probably challenges for renewable energy in general, really are, I would say, twofold. Access to capital, and particularly tax equity. So there are tax credits available for projects, but now you have to find people who have tax liabilities to take advantage of those tax credits, and they have to have profits to do so. Now, a ton of people run around with profits as of late, although hopefully that'll change as the economy turns around. So access to capital is one, and then standardization of investment opportunities. So we really want to get into sort of the capital markets, which is the sort of the goal for all investment opportunities, is you want to be sort of accepted by the capital markets as a standardized investment opportunity. Then you have to create discipline within sort of your asset class so that folks can feel very comfortable about investing in bonds or any other instrument that sort of derives from the activities of your industry. And so that's what we're working on. I think Solar City, they have an IPO coming out, but they're also working on trying to come out with some like standardized securities. Solar Mosaic is working on some bond issuances for folks to start investing in solar through that way. So those are probably the two biggest challenges. To your second question about whether you should get experience first or start your venture, really hard to answer. I happen to believe that you can do both at the same time, and I think, at least my experience was that I had a full-time job and I was doing the venture on the side. And I think that's an excellent way to sort of approximate the amount of work you're going to have in your life if your venture takes off, right? So, and it also, I brought so much from my experience at Fannie Mae to this business that I don't know if I would have known all that stuff and been as successful having not done some work first. So I do think that even with an MBA, that it's really good to get out there in the world and work in an industry that you like would be the greatest thing, because then you learn so much about what's going on and who the players are and what the constraints are. But any sort of corporate job, I think, is a good thing to do. And then you do your own thing on the side until it's ready to take off. Okay.
You were talking about acting like your new role as an investment bank, and you have a pool of investors. Are you still looking for developers of like residential solar panels, or what's your scope of developing?
That's a great question. It's really commercial now, right? So our model of investment banking doesn't make sense to find an investor for a $15,000 system on top of someone's house. Really, it's funny you should ask that question. We started focusing on anything from, I want to say, $1.5 million of capital investment up to $10.5, $20 million of capital investment. A lot of the deals we've closed lately have been for larger deals, but we actually are working on a fund now for some smaller stuff and trying to sort of test how efficient our model can be in originating smaller stuff. So again, sort of expanding on what success you have and pushing out further.
Anybody else have any questions?
One more.
Well, actually, it's more of a comment. It's interesting that your business model didn't involve developing any technology. It was simply solving a money transfer problem.
I'll tell you, it actually did, and I didn't highlight that. The two technologies were this thing, which took us, we probably spent $500,000, no, that's probably too much, $100,000, $200,000, and paying in-house IT personnel to develop this, which is a lot more than this, but it was sort of our like online MLS sort of like thing for projects, right?
It's very much like any kind of web project where the cost of developing a software project is so much lower than the cost of trying to launch a new technology in the industry, in the energy industry.
Yeah, so all the software we developed, we used in-house. Yeah. And this has actually become even more in-house than it was originally. Originally, we thought we'd create this exchange almost for projects, and people would just sort of like find projects and invest. We'd take our commission, that's great. Didn't work out that way. The industry's not ready for that. So you also have to be flexible. If your business plan doesn't work, take a left or take a right, And so we actually went to a more of an investment banking model where we're acting as the investor on behalf of the investor and finding projects that we know meet their qualifications. So, and with the SREC business, we're able to sort of monitor 3,000 some customers with probably 3 people because we utilized operating infrastructure that relied heavily on technology. So we're not a technology company, but we believe in sort of bringing those efficiencies to bear.
I guess just one more. Why did you end up on geographic expansion instead of going into biodiesel or I'm sorry, biomass or one of the other fields? Do they not offer the same type of tax credit incentive? Or
the fields were different enough in their investment profile and their players that we thought it made more sense to take what we had learned and make a smaller step into geographical expansion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things as an entrepreneur you'll be good to do as well, is to try to take, after you create a model, to try to take small steps into other things. We made the mistake once or twice of thinking of an idea that was way over there and sort of filtering it out, but it just doesn't have the support that it needs to sort of take off.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much, George. Very good. And I can say this on behalf of George. He is waiting for your emails.
I am.
If anybody has any questions regarding any topics that he's talked about, mentorship, internships.
Just a friend.
He has 2 kids, right?
Yeah.
But he has plenty of time to get to his email. But the next thing that we're going to do is, can I go back to my presentation here? That's okay. Is that we're going to just talk about some trends in the industry, and actually George is going to help me facilitate this discussion because he's also continuously working in the industry and talks with other entrepreneurs and talks with the equity folks, the investors, and talks with the people on the field. What I'd like to do is actually have this interactive, if you don't mind, and you'll see why in a second. from my experience as being an entrepreneur, I've worked with probably over 20 different startup companies. It's always, I think a good way to go is actually start out with a pilot project. And if you look at where you are today, you're at a university, right? And you can take the university as a whole and think about what are the opportunities at GW, the university, and just brainstorm, right? What is it that you do on a daily basis, right? Is that fair? I mean, for example, solar systems, right? They could think about, well, GW possibly needs to put up a solar system on one of their buildings. I mean, I personally have done an evaluation, like 5 buildings at GW. I did one for grad school. I evaluated putting up solar. So one opportunity would be, hey, I could start a company that focuses on universities, right, putting up solar. So if you just, hypothetically, you could just think about the university and think about all these different ideas related to the university. And so, number one, I put up here, and this is a true fact, in 2012, it was a prediction that the Department of Defense is the world's largest single consumer of energy. And actually, at my current job, I work for the energy, I work for advising the Army and how to green themselves. And so, my point is, and another huge market is the university market. It's not GW, but all the GWs throughout the country. It's a huge market. And so if you just take GW and think globally, take your ideas and focus around GW. It's a great way of thinking about what type of business plan what type of ideas do I have related to sustainability. So, in that, does any, go ahead.
Is the company next door to us that we're really good friends with, Skyline Innovations, they installed a solar thermal system, one of the largest in DC, actually on GW, one of the buildings. And then we are trading the SRAC, so solar credits from that system. So, and they started a little after us, and they're all over the country. So, it's a good example of starting with a project and expanding from there.
Anybody else? If you think about GW as a whole, does anybody else have any ideas? I mean, I don't want to give away what you're thinking about, but just as a whole, does anybody want to share their ideas? I mean, I can come up with ideas all day, but anybody want to share? All right, so number 3, let's go to number 3 is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, buildings across the country, these owners of large, small, medium-sized, and large buildings are investing in energy efficiency. And energy efficiency, they're showing that you can actually pay off your project in, 3 to 5 years sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a structure, I'll just stand up there.
Sure, go ahead.
That, where the building itself doesn't want to pay for the efficiency, so they create sort of what we call an ESCO model, where a third party will pay for the efficiency, and then that third party will get paid back by the savings that the building has. And not 100% of the savings, but like sub 50% of the savings, and still the building gets some savings, the investor gets paid back, and everyone's happy. And you can do that with just, caulking windows all the way up to buying like huge HVAC systems that are, a lot more affordable and efficient. And one of the, we talk about problems to solve. One of the problems that we're having is establishing what is the savings, right? Because energy usage and electricity bills vary so much according to price and time of day and how many people are in the building that year. And so establishing that baseline so that you can figure out how much savings are available is what's made it difficult to really add a lot of structured financing into that model. So a lot of people working on that.
Another area, and I'm actually, George might get into this area in the future, waste to energy. When about 2 years ago, when I was working at another consulting firm, there was a company that was looking to create energy from medical waste. I don't know if you've heard about that. And it's a huge opportunity now. Medical waste, municipal waste. When you're these waste streams, your water, sewage water, has all of this potential energy built that's within it. And then they're taking out that potential energy, all the dirt in there that's potential energy, filtering it, and then taking that and creating energy from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and a lot of the, I'm not that bearer of bad news, but I'm giving you guys the opportunities in these industries. A lot of the issues in that model have been logistics, getting enough of the waste to where it can be burned, and then also some of the waste that comes off after the burning and what that means as well. But it is a model that people are working on. There's some really large plants in Maryland that have been established, and I think there's one that might be coming in D.C. near a wastewater treatment plant as well. But that's what they're sort of working on.
Yep. And number 5, as you probably know, storage is a huge issue right now. Yeah. Huge issue. And I'm being quite honest with you, nobody's even come close to solving this problem.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of R&D going into this field. There's some pilot projects, but there's not, in terms of coming up with a commercialized solution, it's very limited.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key word, commercialized. So, I mean, this is really more of a scientific issue right now, I'll say. But, you know, when you're buying an electronic vehicle, the reason it costs like twice as much as a normal vehicle is because of the battery, storage. And if we can get storage down to where it makes sense from an economic standpoint, it will change what we know of as utility lines in the United States of America, because so much more of the grid will become localized based on sort of local power plants that can store a lot of energy. But right now, the batteries cost so much, it doesn't make sense. One of the non-scientific ways of sort of problems that the industry is having is, again, how to finance battery storage. So I was at a conference yesterday, and a guy mentioned, wouldn't it be great if I could drive an electronic vehicle off the lot at the same price as a regular vehicle, and then, because of my savings every day in my commute, pay back the person that paid for the battery. Sort of like the efficiency model we talked about, right? And so it was sort of, you know, laughed off as ha ha ha, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. But, you know, Solar City, one of the biggest solar installation companies, did just that for solar installs in residential houses, where you get a solar system on your roof, doesn't cost you a thing, and you pay them back with the savings you got. So that's some of the non-scientific opportunities in battery storage.
So I want to come back to the university, GW, for a second, and forget realistic versus non-realistic. If you think about self-generation, right, producing your own energy from the sun, as a student, I thought about this idea when I was a student. Is actually one of my friends, Henry and Zach.
Oh.
They this was about, I'll just say 5 years ago, it might have been 7 years ago. They created a company that they were making, they were actually powering their laptops or phones from solar energy. And the solar energy, there was solar cells on the backpack. Yeah. And the issue that they ran into is one of the issues, it was so expensive to make. The backpacks were selling for $250, right? And so it was very hard to get into the market. Actually, not get into the market, but actually, let's say, to convince people to spend all that money, $250, and to see that there was going to be a payback for them over a period of time. But my point is that if you think about the university market and self-generation, there's tons of opportunity. And then if you think of the idea of storage, right? Storage, you can produce energy during the day. You could actually carry around a little solar panel that's connected potentially to your devices, right? You have a battery, right? And you could connect it to all those devices that need energy. I don't know if it's realistic or unrealistic, but that's the ideas that you can think about.
Yeah, I mean, it also has a lot of microfinance applications as well. If you think about people who are really off the grid, like sub-Saharan Africa and places like that, their economies suffer a lot of times. They don't have light at night, and so how long they can work and not that working all day is a good thing, but you know, it will affect, the ripple effect through those economies as well. So a lot of people are working hard. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest, if you think about all the things that change the world, right now, at least the next 5 years, I think this will be the biggest one, is figuring out battery storage and doing it in a really economic way.
Right, right. So I know we're running short on time, but I want to do that as a lead-in to our prize here. Again, it's $4,000, and the business plans that I hope that each one of you, or as you and your team members, basically, this is what's on the internet as well, is you must propose a new business which falls in one or more of the categories. These actually 9 categories. And sort of the number 10, I'm going to call it like a catch-all. It's the promotion of biodiversity and healthy ecosystems, and foster connections and awareness of sustainability with members of society. And that, you know, allows you to create a nonprofit or more like a service business. But you need to apply one of the 9 areas, you know, energy efficiency, renewable energy, green building, all those, if you fall into the number 10 category. If you look at the university example again, think about sustainable materials and chemicals. Think about what you interacted with on a daily basis. Recycling and waste management, huge opportunity at the university level. All of these, there's so much opportunity. So I am just to let's see. Hold on. Oh, my slide is not here. My final slide was basically next steps, and what I would encourage all of you to do is brainstorm. You know, take a few. There we go. Thank you. What's next? First thing is brainstorm. Meet with other students, friends, mentors, professors. George, again, he's always available. No, seriously, I am always available to answer emails. And what I would do is brainstorm, create a team, write a draft of it, your executive summary, even if you hate it. Then I would take a few days off, brainstorm again, rewrite the executive summary, repeat this process once more. So a total of 3 times, and then finalize your executive summary. That would be my suggestion of this. But that's only me just going through my process of writing a business plan. And I think because as I told John earlier, I think that the hardest thing to overcome is sort of the fear and the sort of like, oh, it's too much work. I'm not going to write a great business plan. I think the best approach is just write something simple. Don't worry about it at first, and then keep adding to it. I mean, I've been there before. I've always had that fear. I've always hated, you know, writing. But once you do something once, and you keep adding to it, it makes it so much easier. Just write a draft, even if it's terrible, and keep enhancing your draft. That's what I tell all of my students, is just do a draft first and go back to it in a couple of days and keep adding to your draft. That's the best way to go. So that's my suggestion. I'm always here to answer questions. And going back to this, again, these are the 10 different areas. If you have any question of which category it fits in, just feel free to email John or I, and we'll get back to you and figure out ways so you can either tell you fit into one of these categories or figure out a way that you can fit into one of these categories. Go ahead.
Does it have to be I guess when I hear the word technology, I think of something technical.
Right.
Or can it be more of a service?
Right. It can be a service that relates to 1 through 9. Right? Applies or utilizes a technology. We're trying to encourage people to enter into this, so we've made it a little flexible. We're all about flexibility.
If you allow me to add something else, I'm Denise with the Office of Entrepreneurship. We guys serve every single one of you Doesn't matter which school you come from. So we offer weekly office hours with our director. He's a well-accomplished entrepreneur, and also he's been a venture capitalist and angel investor. He can give you pointers from all perspectives. So please utilize us, and if you have questions on how to reach us, I'm right here. I'll stick around after the workshop, so feel free to reach me.
Absolutely. And talk about your networking happy hours that you have and all those. Great way to meet people.
Monthly, we stay really busy. We have events for you every week, literally every week. There are different workshops on different entrepreneurial topics. So today we talked about sustainability. We had a wonderful presenter who told you his story. Next week, actually 2 weeks from then, we have John, and he would actually talk about financial projections. So at any given moment, as you're writing this simple draft of your executive summary or business plan, and you get stuck, we have something or some way to help you. So if you have no idea how to write your financial projections, John Rollins will tell you. And we literally, and then in the spring, we'll have a group actually from GW come in and sit down with you in your computer and help you work through it. So different educational workshops. We have networking opportunities, which are very casual and open to everybody in different venues around campus. They're usually every first Thursday of every month. We have something called the Dolphin Tank, where you can come in and you can pitch your idea in front of a panel of entrepreneurs, and they'll tell you whether it's good, it's bad, what you need to fix, how you can fix it. So it's a bunch of stuff going on. Just don't forget, Office of Entrepreneurship.
Dolphin Tank, not Shark Tank.
So I'll offer one more thing from my personal experience, and so I tell all my students, if you think about your career and where you want to be in 2 to 5 years, take where you want to be and work backwards. And so if you think about this business plan competition or a class or an internship, this is a great excuse to talk to people and write them an email or go interview with them. This is a great excuse. And that's the best way to do it, is to go and meet with people, introduce yourself, and here's why I'm talking to you. What do you think? And so this is a great way to move you along your career path to get where you want to be. And so for me, if you have another thing I want to say is, if you're sort of stuck on your career and not sure where you fit into sustainability or renewable energy, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try to help you get in the right direction, because that's important to me, is people move along their career path and figure out where they are and figure out where they want to go and get there. So thank you so much. All go ahead.
Final point. I'm actually really happy you had the internship opportunity, because there are tons of entrepreneurially related internships and actually full-time positions advertised through GWork and also our office. And it's everything from VCs to interning for a company like Soul Systems and whatnot. Follow us, and then also every spring we have a specialized startup career expo. So only the coolest, bestest startups from the area, hopefully yours as well, come and they recruit students of all levels, all majors. So that's it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for coming.